When URB produced its first bearing, there were 3 years until the first television broadcasting took place in Romania, 12 years until the birth of Hagi, 17 years until the opening of Otopeni Airport, 23 years until Nadia Comaneci had written history, 26 years until the first subway ride in Bucharest, 23 years until Dukadan had built a wall in front of the goalposts, 54 years until Romania became an EU member, 63 years until the national arena would be selected to host the UEFA. URB bearings has been produced in Romania for 60 years. The 1950s were the years when Europe was trying to heal the wounds of war. Healing those wounds could become possible only through industrial development. For this reason, the Eastern Bloc countries, which adopted the socialist systems, were developing in manufacturing with the help of USSR. Romania would become a bearing manufacturing center. Production benches brought from Germany were installed by German engineers in Bârlat. The goal was to create a huge bearing factory and manufacture parts existing in all of the machineries with rotating components in the world. And this is how the adventure of Bârlat bearing factory began. Bârlat, exhausted by the war that just ended, was about to become the world's center of bearings production. In 1953, under the flame of these dreams, in Bârlat bearing factory, the first bearing was produced. Romania, which has been a pioneer in scientific developments for many years, will smile earlier. Unfortunately, the unskilled politicians were not giving the so long expected peace to people. As a result, after the war, the socialist countries were assembling the Warsaw Pact and standing against NATO. The first foundations of the Cold War, which would divide the world into different poles, were being laid. During this time, Romania was consistently struggling for its own development. In the world's bearing center, 3 factories were continuously producing bearings, and the machines were rotating just as the world was. Rulmenti Bârlat, with its 400,000 square meters built facility, was the main actor in the productions of bearings. It produced more than 25,000 types of bearings in the most integrated way. The steel entering Bârlat was going out of the factory in the form of bearings to be distributed to the whole world. In the early 80s, Rulmenti Bârlat already had approximately 30 years of experience. Bearings seen by no one, but one of the most strategic parts of a machine, were being produced by engineers and factory workers meticulously with the highest quality standards. On November 9, 1989, a world-changing event had happened. People decided to tear down the wall which separated them. A month later, Romania became a part of this change and the country was taking the first step for democracy. But the desired expectations for Rulmenti factory did not come true. Due to poor managed policies, Rulmenti Bârlat recorded a fast decline. One of the most important bearing factory of Europe was sending alarm signals. Disproportionate and uncoordinated employment, unplanned production, and imitation bearings were leading Bârlat Rulmenti factory to bottom. In the late 90s, after the democracy wind inflated the sails of the country, Romania started the privatization process. Bârlat's sleeping giant was waiting to be awakened. During those years, George Hagi was on his way to Istanbul. Maradona of the Carpathians' main goal was maintain his victories further in Turkey. While Hagi was coming to Turkey, a Turk was going to Romania. The adventure of Rulmenti factory privatization began with the arrival of Harun Adıgüzel to Romania. Harun Adıgüzel decided to awake the sleeping giant. In 2000, when Galatasaray received the UEFA Cup under the leadership of Hagi, 2 years of privatization process had ended. In Bârlat, it was time to start production. Planned and coordinated activity has started. The factory, on the verge of bankruptcy and living troubles with the creditors at the time of privatization, managed to make a profit on its first year. The number of staff was planned and rearranged after the consultations with the syndicate union. Investments were made in order to increase production. In 2004, when Romania joined NATO, URB was building a second bearing factory in Turkey. URB and Romania were in an absolute hunger for growth. In 2007, the EU opened its doors to Romania. In the same year, MGM Hungary plant was included in URB Group. Rulmenti Bırlat acquisition in 2000, when it was on the verge of downfall, once again remembered being a giant that can produce non-stop. URB Group had presented Rulmenti to the world as its flagship. The Admiral was in Romania and the tip of the compass was in Bırlat. In 2011, URB Group announced the targets for the year 2023. URB Group intends to enter the year 2023 with 10 production units and aims to achieve a turnover of $1 billion. The foundations of a fourth production unit in India have been already laid. URB Group has been in Romania for 60 years. When Romania was healing its war wounds, when Gregor Moisel was preparing the mathematical algorithm of computers, when the first subway ride was being taken in Bucharest, when Emil Palat was winning the Nobel Prize for Medicine, when Nastase became the #1 tennis player in the world, when Romania defeated Argentina and qualified for the quarterfinals, when Romania joined the European Union, when the national arena opened its doors to UEFA, URB was in Romania. It witnessed all the development and transformation, not only being a spectator, but became a part of it. Romania is developing, URB is developing. It's growing, renewing, protecting the environment and increasing its production. URB Group is writing the future from Bırlat.